we should know that God not only knows what's best for us, but he also wants what's best for us. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and do not rely on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him or know him, and he will make your path straight. Don't be wise in your own eyes. Fear the Lord and turn away from evil. This will be healing for your body and strengthening for your bones. We know that all things work together for the good of those who love God. So if you don't love God, then maybe this isn't a good promise to hold on to. But for those who love God, we know all things work together for good. For those who love God, who are called according to his purpose. So for those of you who do love God, and you do believe that you are called to his purpose, and you are trying to walk in that purpose that he has for you, then this is great news, because you can believe and trust in the fact that God loves you, and that everything that's circulating in your life right now, whether it's right now, whether it's going to be in the future, it's all being allowed or orchestrated or both to a certain extent for your own good. And like I said, in knowing these two verses alone, which we're also going to run into a few other verses throughout the video, keeping in mind that God not only knows what's best for you, but he wants what's best for you, if you keep that in mind, then that's when you're going to receive the best results, the best faith to be able to trust in God's timing. And this is another thing that I've learned, that God understands that a blessing received too early becomes a curse. And so God is not going to do things too late, but he's also not going to let things happen too early either. What you intended for evil, God intended to use for good. A lot of things we can look at it and we can see it as like, dang, like God, why would you allow that to happen? Like God, why did this happen? Why did that happen? And we have to remember once again in Isaiah, it says that God's wisdom is exponentially, incalculably, just way higher than ours. Like he created our finite minds. For those of you, once again, who are Christians and believe in the Christian God, if you ascribe to our Christian God, then in our theology, that's what it is. Like he created our finite minds, and that we're trying to use to explain him, you know? Like, how can we use what he created that's finite to try and explain something that's infinite? That he said that even our greatest level of intelligence is like still his lowest level of foolishness. Like that's how much it is. Like that's just how far beyond things that he possibly is. It's like being a parent and then you have a child, and your child clearly has not lived enough life to know better. And sometimes they think that they know better about certain situations, but you're just like, no, trust me. And you laugh because it's like in their heads they really do feel like, no, this is the right thing. But later on, as they grow, then they realize like, oh shoot, mommy and daddy were right about this. It's the same way, only even like 1,000, a million, infinitely times more multiplied, because God is just that wise and just that all-knowing. He's omnipotent, he's omniscient, and he's just simply omnipresent as well. It is vital to recall and believe not only in these stories, but also God's promises. And those are huge. This book right here, it's a 66-book love letter. God said in Numbers 23:19 that he's not a man that he should lie. So that means that everything that he's saying here in this book, this is a big book. Clearly God talks a lot. You know, if you're talking to somebody and someone says that I do not lie, and they say this much, then that means either you can really trust in this person as you try to go through and scrutinize it, or, you know, you really can't. But clearly the person is confident to say like, I don't lie, I never lie, I'm always truthful, I'm not the author of confusion, and then make such a deep book with a whole bunch of promises. But I wanted to list a few of the promises that we could all lean on and trust in whenever we may be going through tough times. Because when we are trying to, you know, think about God's timing and think about trusting in him and everything, then these are the types of verses and these are the types of stories altogether that will really help us to be able to believe that God will come through at the time that he's supposed to come through. And if he doesn't come through, just like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego thought, then, you know, it's still for a reason. You know, Stephen can tell you that. Stephen in the Bible, the apostle who was stoned to death, but then even as he was being stoned, he saw Jesus standing at the right hand of the Father. And I'm believing that Jesus is even like saluting him. You know, he's saying like, yo, my son, you've done well.